G'day mate, 40 here. I'm back in Sydney. It's good to be live. We're going out live over YouTube, over Rumble, over Twitter, over Facebook. And I want to talk about the demise of the wolf warrior. So some people think that different groups just have, certain inevitable characteristics, and that's just how they'll be. So at the time of the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin, many people just thought that blacks in America are just inherently passive. When Jews have been particularly oppressed, they've struck many people as particularly passive. Now many people in America think that Mexican Americans, they're just always going to be super passive, or the Chinese used to be thought of as passive. And then we had the rise of wolf warrior diplomacy, right? So wolf warrior diplomacy is China's diplomacy that's become much more confrontational, much more combative. Its proponents are just denouncing the mildest criticism of the Chinese government, of the Chinese Communist Party. They're using physical violence against protesters and dissidents. And there was one particular Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman, Zhao Lijian, who was particularly combative. I mean, he was really off the hook, and he is now being demoted. So just trying to figure out, does this mean some move of wider significance, or is this just purely incidental? Let's get Peter Zion here.
Now, for those of you who have been following me for a while, you know that I am not very bullish on China. It's facing not demographic collapse, it's far faster than that, just complete demographic dissolution and economic collapse that goes along with that within the decade, assuming that there are no other problems. The United States has put in a series of technological restrictions that basically killed the entire tech sector. Their energy sector is completely dependent upon the ability to access the Middle East, which is an area they can't reach and force. Their trade system and their economic structures and their employment structures are utterly dependent upon the U.S. Navy making it safe for their civilian vessels to hit the world over. They are arguably the most internationally exposed country in the world. And on top of that, their financial sector and their agricultural sectors are absolute messes, things that make Enron look really well run. This is a country that is not going to last a whole lot longer. And in that environment, the question is, how do the Chinese prepare for the economic and if they want to politically continue? To this point, their solution has been absolutely rabid, foaming at the mouth nationalism, convincing their people that it doesn't matter if you can feed your kids, it doesn't matter if you have your job, you're Han Chinese and Chairman Xi is your leader, and that's enough. And to that end, Chinese propaganda has gone from the aggressive to the absolutely hateful. The person who has probably played the biggest role from an international point of view in this is a guy by the name of Zhao Lijian, who has been the spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he is kind of the poster child for what the Chinese call warrior wolf diplomacy, which is an unapologetic, ultra-nationalist, very hate and invective-filled approach to dealing with the rest of the world. So this is the guy who has popularized art that shows Australian soldiers with their knees on third world children. This is the guy who insists that COVID started at Fort Detrick in the United States and was then spread to the world as a way to wipe out non-white people, that sort of thing. He's a real piece of work, and he's a general asshat. Anyway, as long as he was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he was the voice of China on the international stage. Well, in the first week of January, he was transferred very quietly away from the MFA, and he is now a small wig at the Department of Ocean and Boundary Affairs, which is about like getting taken from being the spokesman of God, and all of a sudden now you're responsible for, what would be a great example here? You're in charge of Border Patrol in northern Idaho. It's difficult to imagine someone falling so far so fast. Now, the challenge we have in interpreting this is that no one really knows what Xi is thinking, because Xi is in such a tight cult of personality that he doesn't really confide in anyone, and it's very difficult for intel to penetrate that sort of environment. But we know that Zhao was one of Xi's favorites. And so for Xi to be not just demoted, but put into a complete cubbyhole in the middle of nowhere in terms of the bureaucracy is an indication that Xi knows that this strategy has utterly failed. There is no version of China that survives this unless it finds a way to work with the United States in a constructive way, and one that basically gives the United States everything from a strategic point of view that it wants. The United States is the only country that even theoretically has the tools that could help China survive what's coming. And having somebody whose job it is to throw gravel into the gears of the diplomatic relationship obviously is not helping at all. But to have him so dramatically demoted indicates that perhaps, just maybe kind of sorta, Xi is realizing that the end is approaching, and he really needs to change diplomatic gears if there's any hope for China surviving the rest of this decade. So it's very perspective at this point. But if there was one person who needed to move in order to make a new approach happen, it was Zhao, and now he's gone. Okay, that's it for me. Until next time.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Let me get my act together here. Hang on.
Why women want everybody to seem this egalitarian sort of flat landscape? I'm trying to work out what the adaptive pressure is that's caused this to be the case. Like, why would it not be the case that men do that, and why would it be the case that women do that?
Okay, so this takes us into kind of my work looking at primatology. So I'll give you a little bit of background on that. You can stop me because it may not be that interesting. But basically, if
Okay, that's Chris Williamson talking to a Harvard professor of evolutionary theory, Joyce Benenson, about how do women compete for partners. Play more from that later, but finally got my ducks in a row. So over the past 10 years, when I've talked about the rise of China with people, a lot of people have argued, well, China, it's not like those other superpowers. It's not like the bad United States. It's not like the bad Soviet Union, right? China is peaceful, right? China is not going to be aggressive. China is not going to be unnecessarily assertive. China is not going to be imperialistic, because just the way of the Chinese people is to go along, to get along. They're very pragmatic. They just want to raise their living standards. They're not going to be a threat to anyone. And I said, no, the situation is much more important than whatever you think are the inherent, personality traits of a particular country. So when your situation changes so that you have dominant power over everyone else, even if you tend to be fairly introverted and shy and timid, the change in situation is going to have a powerful change on your personality. And so too with countries. If China, rises to a dominant position in the world, and between about 2012 and 2018, China felt like it was rising to a dominant position in the world. And so when you think that your rise is unstoppable, right, when you think you're in an incredibly powerful position, then we all tend to adapt, wolf warrior diplomacy. All right, we bully. And we all have tendencies to bully if we can get away with it. To the best of my knowledge, I only had one girlfriend who I ever bullied. And I just found myself yelling at her a lot because that particular situation, she would allow me to get away with it. Didn't happen in any other relationship of which I'm aware, because it just wouldn't work. And the women I was dating wouldn't put up with it, and I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing it. So too with countries. If you place them in a particular situation where they can bully others, they're going to bully others. If it's more effective for you as an individual or you as a nation state to speak quietly and carry a big stick, then you'll employ that method. All right, we all tend to, apply, all sorts of methods, and then we tend to settle on the one that works. So, sometimes yelling works, sometimes, just being quiet works. So think about the diplomatic strategies of Kai, the homeless hitchhiker.
I'm one of the heroes.
Yeah, can we talk to you? Do you mind?
What do you want to talk about?
What happened today?
Well, went straight out of Dogtown, skateboarding, surfing it up. Before I say anything else, I want to say no matter what you've done, you deserve respect. Even if you make mistakes, you're lovable. And it doesn't matter your look, skills, or age, or size, or anything, you're worthwhile. No one could ever take that away from you. Now, this stuff right here, I was driving and I was in the passenger side of this f***er's car, and he comes over on there. He was over by the recycling center. He says, oh, when I was in the Virgin Islands, 30 years old on a business trip, I f***ed this 14-year-old. I was like, you what? He's like, I raped this 14-year-old, starts crying, gives me a big hug. He's like 300-pound guy. I'm like, oh, shit. You must be f***ed, man. Like, what's he talking about? I didn't take him seriously at first. He comes driving down this way. He's like, you know what? I come to realize I'm Jesus Christ, and I can do anything I f***ing want to. And watch this. Bam! And he smashed into this f***ing guy right there. Pinned him in between that f***ing truck. And so I hop out. I look over, the guy's pinned there. I mean, like, freight train riders know this. Like, if you get pinned between something, do not f***ing move that shit. Otherwise, you bleed out. Like, motherfucker, I ran in, I grabbed the keys, he's f***ing sitting there like nothing even happened. And like, f***ing, like, man, if you started driving that car around again, man, there would have been a hell of a lot of bodies around here. F***ing, I hop on out, and so I grabbed the bag, I threw it over by that pole right there, and then f***ing Buddy gets out, and these two women are trying to help him. He runs up and he grabs one of them, man. Like, a guy that big can snap a woman's neck like a pencil stick. So I f***ing ran up behind him with a hatchet, smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
The lady said you saved her life.
She was the one who got grabbed by that f***er. You know what? F*** is cool. That guy ain't. Shit.
How'd you get in his car? How did you?
I was hitchhiking. Well, good thing I was hitchhiking. Yeah, people say don't hitchhike. Well, this is what happens. Was yeah, well, at least I was here.
So he did this on purpose.
Dude, that guy was fucking cooked out, man. Like, he's beyond howley. Like, I don't even see any breath in him, you know what I'm saying?
Can I get your name and where you're from, if you don't mind?
I'm Kai.
Kai, can I get the spelling for you?
Straight out of Dogtown, K-A-I.
K-A-I, do you have a last name?
No, bro, I don't have anything.
Where are you from originally? Are you from Fresno area?
Sophia, West Virginia.
No kidding. How old are you?
I can't call it.
Okay. What, have you ever experienced anything like today? And what made you take the actions that you did?
So this guy was a viral hero for saving people's lives, and now he is convicted of murder. 3 months later, he was charged with murder. He was having sex with some, older 74-year-old gay attorney in New Jersey, and Kai ended up beating him to death. So Kai employs, one strategy in one situation, employs a different strategy in a different situation. There's interesting documentary about the Hatchet Wielding Hitchhiker, meaning Kai, that's just been released on Netflix.
The day that we hit the man in the head with a hatchet. And in Kai's words, he's bragging and says, oh man, this guy picks me up and I offer him a joint and he can't even handle his shit, man, because I handed him a joint, but what he didn't know was it was laced, man. And he starts listing all these drugs and I don't even know what they are. But what Kai explicitly told me was that he handed this man a laced joint, and then Kai proceeds to tell me, then he starts flipping out over nothing because he can't handle his shit, and he's...
Okay, so the real story of Kai the Hitchhiker is a little bit different than that initial viral video.
Living that life without those responsibilities, and it was going well. And then it didn't. It's a much more sad existence than maybe the exhilarating or free experience people think.
This is Kai the Hatchet Wielding Hitchhiker. Became an internet sensation. Then he killed someone in New Jersey. Some 74-year-old attorney.
In New York City. And posted this disturbing and ominous Facebook post. He talked about this being his Mother's Day message. And it's not what you would expect from a Mother's Day message. It reads, first memories, I was in a crib and family was fussing over me, but I kept getting told that, quote, I had a demon. I would get locked in a room for 20 hours a day with a little porta potty camp toilet in the corner of the room. Then after that, my mouth filled with hot pepper and soap for yelling, fuck you, at the top of my lungs. Signing off, Happy Mother's Day. And of course, I remember when I met him for the first time after the original incident in Stockton, when we sat down for that lengthy interview, he definitely disclosed some really, really terrible things that happened to him. And
so it's not clear if these terrible things that happened to him actually happened, but this galvanizing, charismatic hitchhiker
this morning in a New Jersey neighborhood as
had
police
a
try
dark
to
side.
solve the killing of a well-known attorney. The 73-year-old victim was discovered inside his home on Starlight Drive in Clark. That's where Joseph Galfi lived for the past 15 years. Friends knew something was wrong when Galfi didn't show up.
for someone that you've kind of grown to care about and you have a nice relationship with, now they're looking, at him for murder. On the 14th, 2013, Kai posted this on Facebook. What would you do if you woke up with a groggy head, metallic taste in your mouth, in a stranger's house? Walked to the mirror and seen cum dripping from the side of your face, from your mouth, and started retching, realizing that someone had drugged, raped, and blown their fucking load in you.
And he had this ominous question at the end, what would you do? And I remember turning to my wife and being like, this guy just killed someone.
Yeah, what would you do in that situation? Like, God, what a horror show. So, yeah, wolf warrior diplomacy, right? Hatchet warrior diplomacy. Initially, he became famous for using his hatchet for good. And then he got a second bout of fame for using his fist for evil. He just apparently stomped this 74-year-old gay attorney to death. So It's the same with nation states. Cute and cuddly 1 minute, and then when they have the power to throw their weight around, right, the cute and cuddly goes away, and the bare fists and the weapons and the hatchets and the bombs start coming out. So I have been watching some Decoding the Gurus content.
Was my question, and the second
I
was,
can pronounce kurz gesagt as a shibboleth.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I believe that's the kind of immigration question when you arrive in Germany. But and your shirt, just out of curiosity, that is a Snoopy shirt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like
It
this
is.
together
Come on, man.
with the whole gang.
Okay.
Get to the high
That's
quality
good. I
content.
like that. Yeah, I approve. So easily reach, pathological levels. The only possible issue is that like I think that in most cases, for something to reach like the level of disorders or that kind of thing, it has to be interfering with your life, right? Like, so if you're extremely successful,
right? So you can believe many strange beliefs, all right, weird beliefs, conspiracy theories. It becomes pathological when it interferes with your life.
Yeah,
because of your narcissism. It's
yeah, I mean, it's a two-sided sword. It can be really helpful to have this single-minded approach to things. It's really a resource in many situations. And my point really is not my point really is not to call anyone a narcissist. I hope I made that clear.
But I think I also say to Matt like that, and I think Matt also thinks this. In fact, I know he does that. Like, basically, one of the key concepts for understanding most of the people we cover is just to understand them as people with like huge reserves of narcissism, because that often explains the behavior. You might think, well, I wouldn't do that, or normal people. Like, no, normal people wouldn't do that, but these people are not in the same. They don't think in the same way that most of average people do, and for better or worse. But I think on the point about the games people play, and that I read that I think when I was a teenager, and it was one of the initial books that got me interested in psychology, because I recognized a whole bunch of the games that it outlined as like as things that I did or other people do in my life, and I was like, oh, this is actually a very interesting analysis. But I also noticed, I don't know if you had the same feeling with that book, but that book also presented many of these interactions as like kind of they are problematic and that we need to escape them and live like a game-free life. And when it gave the examples of what like a game-free conversation looked like, it sounded like an insane cult member talking to like, because it felt a little bit like they were pointing out issues about like people saying something, but they're actually doing a different thing underneath and getting another psychological need served. But some of the things that they were highlighting were also kind of social niceties or like just conventions, and the notion that you can have speech with those completely stripped out and that will be more efficient. I was like, yeah, I don't think that would work.
I think the book is just important because they were the first person who looked at this in a way and defined the term. I think it's not very scientific, and it's really fun to read because it's like an alien looking at humans and talking like a sports commentator about their interaction. So my other example would be more recent, but it's a German from Rainer Sachse who's like,
so I'm coming to you live right now from Sydney, Australia. It is January the 11th here, 2023. It's 9:53 a.m.
like a psychologist specialized in this field, and the whole thing and the sound.
And I'm playing a discussion of Chris Kavanaugh here talking to supporters of his Decoding the Gurus podcast.
And how they talk about it changed a lot compared to 50 years ago.
Are you like involved in psychology or that kind of area?
No, it's I went to a talk. We have someone in Germany who is also related to like the German skeptic scene, and she's a forensic psychologist who gave a talk about female psychopaths, and it was really gruesome, and I didn't want to buy her book because it was just like 15 children died in the first chapter or something, so no, thank you. And I asked for something more theoretical, and then she recommended me the Rainer Sachse guy, who is like a German expert for personality disorders. And so I read the textbook, but I'm not an expert. But I found, and just this point, If it's not clinically
And
relevant,
hang on a
they call it, I think,
second.
personality
We've
styles.
got Elliott Blatt in the room. EB, what's going down, bro?
Hey, I'm gonna try video on. We might have a little technical issue here because I'm down at the beach and the connection's squirrely. So if I start losing audio quality, let me know and I'll set the camera off.
Okay, bro. I'm
that's
down.
it.
I hear you got a story.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a story. I got to show you the view here first. Check this out.
Amazing.
You see this?
Yeah.
The storm just blew through. I've never seen a storm like that in my life. You know, it was really incredible. And then the sun came out like a big bald head, like nothing had happened. I mean, hail, just completely no visibility. It was like pitch black rain. It was just incredible. So anyway, I came down to the beach to check it out. So yeah, I had a pretty interesting story yesterday. Shall I?
Please.
Shall I rip in or what?
Yeah, please.
So we had this conversation. I was hemming and hawing about the nicotine gum.
Yeah.
Right. So finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided I needed to try nicotine gum. So I went to Walgreens and I bought a little mini pack for $12. All right, just so I could sample it. And I took half a piece in the afternoon, and didn't notice anything immediately. But then, subtly and imperceptibly, my mood just brightened to like this great degree. Like I'd been really kind of glum and lethargic and kind of depressed, you know, and just because of all the overcast weather and so forth. And then suddenly I just noticed like I felt happy again. And I was sort of thinking about jokes, making jokes, and kind of just having a nice little internal monologue, you know. And so, you know, I was starting to become a fan of this gum, you know. So that's just sort of a little predicate to what's to follow here. So I've been trying to buy this portable generator from this woman on Craigslist for like 3 weeks, right? And it's like I send her an email, and then she says, "Yeah, I'm not around, but yeah, let's get together. We'll do it," you know, and blah blah blah. And then, all right, I'm fine. So I just keep checking back, email every 5 or 6 days. Sometimes she ghosts me. So finally, I get an email. Last week, she said she's on vacation, but she'll be ready to do this when she gets back on Sunday, and that we could do the deal on Monday, which was yesterday. So, I'm happy about this. This is like this sort of dangling piece of business that's been out there, and I finally get to. How's my audio, by the way? How's my audio?
It's not great. I think maybe it'd be best to turn off the video.
All right. Okay. Is this any better?
Yeah.
We'll see. All right. So anyway, so we make this deal. Meet me at the grocery outlet parking lot. And she doesn't say cash only, right? Now, normally when you do a Craigslist deal, part of the protocol is, do you accept Venmo? Or if you're selling something, you got to clearly, explicitly state cash only. Because most people just do Venmo or PayPal or something else. They don't bother with cash, you know. It's not cool. It's déclassé, you know. So my operating assumption is, well, I can just do Venmo. So we make this deal. We say, okay, we'll meet in the parking lot, and then I'm driving now. Now remember, my senses are acute now because I'm chewing this gum, right?
Yep.
And I drive past the Bank of America and I say to myself, God, I should just get cash. I'm having this feeling I should get cash. The thing costs $220, and I have $70 in my wallet, which isn't going to cut it. So I drive past the Bank of America, and this feeling comes over me. stop and get cash, stop and get cash. You got to get cash, right? But that introduces the problem of parking. And then I thought to myself, I'll stop at the next Bank of America, which I know I'll be passing, because Bank of Americas are just littered throughout the city like cordwood. You know, you miss one, you got another one. You know, you don't really have to sweat it too much, because there's always a Bank of America eventually. So no big deal. So I'm supposed to meet her there at 5 o'clock, right? And I have about 45 minutes to get there. So, but it usually takes 30 minutes to get there. So I've got basically a 15-minute cushion. So that leads me to think, well, I got plenty of time to stop the bank. No big deal, bro. Just keep going. So as it turns out, because of all these storms and things, roads are closed, traffic is building up here and there. The whole journey is taking a lot longer than anticipated, right?
Yep.
And I'm still not late, but I'm really eating into my 15-minute margin, right? Because I'm nothing if not punctual.
Yep.
So the final Bank of America that I know exists prior to the grocery outlet is like 2 blocks from the grocery outlet. So it's like very close to where we're going. It's maybe 3 blocks. And so I pass this Bank of America. Now it's 4:55, 5 minutes until D-Day, you know, till I'll be late. So I look, I don't see any parking. And I say, I'll blow it off. Forget about it. I don't need it. She'll take Venmo if I'm emphatic enough, she'll do it. Right. And so I get there. Of course, I get there at 4:55. She's not there yet. And so I got 5 minutes to kill. So I go into this market. And the market, this is grocery outlet. It's got like a security guard out front, right? Now every place has got a security guard now. And the security guard is like this kind of fat Mexican guy with a black face mask and a big black sweater. But it's not like he's not a Navy SEAL. He's got this big, like, paunchy beer belly. It's kind of just suffocating his belly. So it sort of accentuates the roundness of his belly, you know?
Yes.
It just wasn't like, he wasn't intimidating, dude. He just was not intimidating. Black outfit notwithstanding, he just wasn't intimidating. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is the new America. I'll just deal with it. Don't obsess, bro. Just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. So I kill 5 minutes and I come out of the store. And then it's this comedy of areas. Are you here? Yeah, I'm here. Where are you? I don't know. Where are you? What color's your car? What color's your car? I'm in a silver truck. Okay, silver truck. Come up by the exit. So we do this whole comedy of errors thing, trying to find each other over text. And we finally find each other. And I come up to her. And she opens the back of her truck, and there it is, the generator, as pictured in Craigslist. And I'm okay. I'm like, let's do this deal. Now, then I said, I say, you don't take Venmo, do you? She says, no. And I said, and she said no, like, you know that tone of voice people get when they're happy? They're saying no.
Yep.
You know, there's that certain personality type that likes to, like, just to deny you what you want. And they're so happy they have the power to do it, and they're like, it thrills them. Gives them a little sexual zip just by saying no, you know? And she's like, no. She's got this scowl. She's got a total RBF. And I'm like, ugh. You know what an RBF is, right?
Resting bitch face.
Yes, good. I didn't know if that was common nomenclature. And so I say, all right, well, do you take PayPal? And she's like, no. And I go, how about Zelle? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh my God. So there's no way you can do this. Not this one time. She's like, no. And I'm like, all right. It's the Bank of America 2 blocks away. I'll go back to the bank. I'll get out the cash. I'll come back and just wait right here. And then I said, no, better yet, why don't you drive over to my storage area, which is like 3 blocks away, and I'll meet you there. And begrudgingly, she does this, but she's acting like I'm really putting her out, like I should have planned ahead. I should have planned better. This was my fault. She's mad at me. She's got all the power. And now, however charming I am, she's going to resist my charm and say no to everything, right? She just got this, we have this really like sadistic dominatrix relationship governing, And like, I'm saying, all right, just go there, go to the storage thing. I'm going to go to the bank and I'll get the cash and I'll meet you there. This whole thing, I'll be there in 5 minutes, right? And so I do this. I drive back to the bank and I get there and there's 2 things I noticed immediately. The ATM, there's 2 ATMs. One's inside the lobby, the other one's outside of the building. The one outside the building is being completely dismantled and being worked on by like a Mexican handyman. He's doing all these repair work. So that ATM is completely out of commission. So, but I see that the bank employees are coming out for the evening. Now this is it's almost 5 o'clock. The bank closes at 4. And so, but they basically, the whole banking staff was leaving together and they were being led by one guy that was obviously the manager. He had that manager vibe about him. I mean, he immediately picked him out as the leader, as the alpha bank teller. And so I come up to him and he's like this paunchy guy and it looks like he's into Tolkien and he's got a neatly trimmed beard, but he's got a gray sweater, but also this big globular belly, And I'm like, all right, what the fuck? I know it's a long shot, but maybe he'll let me in the lobby. So I say, hey man, any chance you just let me slide into the lobby and just use the ATM real quick and I'll just zip right out? I got very colloquial with him, thinking that he would respond to that. And then he's like, oh man, he really wanted to say yes, Luke. This is like the opposite of this woman, right? He's looking for a reason to say yes. And he's about to say yes, but then he says no. Because they audit everything. There's cameras, and if they watch the tape and they see that I let you in there, it's gonna be a big problem. And I can't let you do it. I'm sorry. So he was really upset. He was really like, it pained him to have to say no. So this is the contrast between the two here. And I'm like, fair enough. This is the new me. I just roll with stuff. I don't freak out. I don't cause tantrums. I don't mace people. I'm not baked Alaska. I just roll the punches. I just go, I find another ATM. So I get back in the car and at first I text her because I know I'm going to piss her off because this is like another additional 5 minutes of her waiting for me, right? And I say, I'll go to the gas station. There's an ATM in there. I get the cash there. It'll be 5 minutes delay. I text all this out. And so I haul ass down to the gas station. I go into the building. It's one of those gas station ATMs, and it's like $4 ATM fee. It's absurd, right? And this burns my ass to no end. I hate this so much, paying these exorbitant ATM fees at these gas stations. And you go in a gas station, and it smells like fried chicken and like just junk food. It's just not a positive environment. And I'm a little miffed about having to do this. So I go to the ATM, put in my card, type in $200, and like it just starts waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm like, oh, this is annoying. So bear in mind, there's been all of this network problems because of all of the storms, the down trees, and network connectivity. I'm thinking, oh, this is just another obstacle I'm having to deal with. And so eventually it's like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It's like, system processing, please wait. System processing, please wait. Over and over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, just be calm, be calm, be calm. And then finally it says, transaction declined, system malfunctioning, something like that, some sort of error like that. So I can't get cash out of this ATM. I've strike 2, right? And like, I talk to the people there, and then they've got they've got the soundtrack going in the gas station. And do you know that song by I think it's Joni Mitchell, or not Joni, but Judy Collins? You know, I thought about love this side down, up and down, and still I found the love illusion. You know, that song. It's from the '60s. It's a catchy tune, but it's being done by this sort of modern take, like this one of those shrieking Puerto Rican like screaming ladies that that are popular on pop radio all of a sudden. So I'm listening to that. I'm sort of smirking about this. I'm like, what are the chances of this song playing at a moment like this? And so I let that all go ahead because I'm on a mission. I still have to get this cash. So now I have to drive past the storage area where the woman is waiting, right? With the woman with a generator. And so I have this choice. Do I go to a third ATM and keep her waiting yet another 5 minutes? Or do I go and talk to her and tell her what's going on? And maybe that would smooth things over, because things are on a knife edge. These are just these are very tense situation going on here. And I'm going back and forth. But if I give her an opening, this will just be just what she needs to just do something really mean and bitchy to me, right? Or do I go to another convenience store, hope that ATM is working, get the cash out, come back, and then just deal with the outrage of me being like a lot longer than I said I would be. And so as I'm driving, immediately when things are going bad, you always make the wrong decision, right? When you're down, it just keeps getting worse. You can't make the right decision. So I decided to talk to her first. So I drove in, and there she was waiting, and she's steaming. I could tell, you know, the whole pickup truck is just fulminating and pulsating with anger, right? And I'm like, it's all right. I'm cool. I can smooth this over because I got nicotine gum. I'm at the top of my game. I'm going to just talk my way out of this situation. So I get to her. I roll down the window, explain the whole situation. And she's not amused in the slightest, right? Not amused at all. And I'm like, well, listen, I still don't have the cash, but there's a third ATM possibility over here. Now, why don't we just unload the generator now so we don't have to double back, right? Then you can follow me to this third convenience store, this third ATM. I'll go in there, I'll get the cash, and then we'll be done with this thing. And she's like, what does she say, Luke?
No way.
No. She says no, Luke. She found yet another opportunity to say no. And like, I started begging her. I've basically reduced to begging this woman. Come on, just do this. Just do that. I'm trying, but I'm not, you know, I want to plant my fist into her little Pillsbury Doughboy face right now. I'm so mad at this bitch, right?
So mad.
You'd never know.
That you're coming
I'm
back
so
here
mad right now.
1,000 times if you have to. They don't do this to you.
They don't do this to fucking me. Right? So, but you would never know from my exterior because I'm this like warm, sunny, bubbly, just enthusiastic personality, just raining down sunshine in an otherwise murky day. And like, just come on, let's just do this. Let's just efficient. And she's like, no, there's just too much risk involved. What if that ATM is broken? She's like imagining all these scenarios. And I'm like, I just drove 45 minutes across town to consummate this deal, right? You got to work with me just a little tiny bit, you know? I'm psychically trying to convey this without, I'm screaming, but it's like a silent scream. I'm like trying to project this thought into her head telepathically because she was not responding to my words. And so she's like, no, right? And I'm like, well, we're not going to be able to do this thing. And she's like, I don't have any more time. I have to go. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to blow this whole deal up for 5 minutes? She's like, I don't have any time. And we're bickering about that. So we spent 2 minutes bickering about how much time she had left. And I was trying to explain to her, like, this could all be over in 3 minutes if she would just play ball a little bit, right? No, she just held her ground. I said, well, we'll have to do this another time then, won't we? And I'm like, can we do this tomorrow? Meaning today. And she's like, guess what?
No.
No! She says no, Luke. She can't meet me until Thursday, right? So now I'm like, how can this happen to me, Luke? What have I done? What am I doing wrong? So the deal didn't happen. I went home empty-handed yesterday after really leaving no stone unturned to try to find a solution.
Wait.
And
You left many stones unturned. You weren't prepared. I mean, I would never have showed up for that without the money in cash.
Really? That would have been your first thought. You said, what if she's part of the 10% of people that only accept cash? I better stop at this bank and get cash.
Yeah, I would have had cash.
Well, lesson learned, because now that's the policy going forward. You have to plan for the worst case and just let life surprise you, right? Let life surprise you when the worst case doesn't actually materialize.
When
So
you spend the evening with a woman and it comes time to pay up, do you always pay cash or do you just Venmo?
Oh, Venmo, bro.
Okay.
So anyway, then I spent a few minutes thinking about how just irrational and stupid this one was. And then I just started laughing, Then I just think, this is life. This is why I don't leave the house. This is what the new America is. You just have to expect this. You have to operate from the you're in a semi-chaotic society, and if anything goes right, you should be grateful for that, but just expecting to go wrong. And perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but
wait, so you didn't learn from this that you should have shown up with cash and probably left a little earlier because of all the storm disruptions?
yeah, I learned all that stuff. But yes, those are lessons. Those are the obvious takeaways, right? But because your show is about the big questions, the bigger picture, I'm trying to tie this into a more, literary theme here about how one navigates in the new America.
Okay, and how many sticks of nicotine gum have you had now?
Well, yesterday there's 4 milligrams in a piece of gum. So yesterday I did half a piece of gum, right? And then today I did a half of one around lunchtime, and then I just did another half of one. So I'm on 4 milligrams. But I'm a fan, Luke. I like this nicotine gum. I think it's a new way. It's an exalted way of living.
Well, it seems to work for Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. Look at his audience.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know, man. So yeah, is this just another habit? Oh, so by the way, okay, that was one story. The other part, so last Friday I went to Costco, the same trip where I was looking at the nicotine gum but didn't buy it. I also bought this giant jar of airborne gummies. Do you know what those are?
Yes.
Okay. So they're like these jelly fruit flavored candies, but they have all kinds of cold medicine sort of infused into them. So that technically, they're considered a medicine, but from all intent, the user experience of these things is like you're eating a big slobbery piece of candy, a big jelly, tasty, fruity piece of candy, like you used to eat when you were a child. And like, I was really reluctant to do this, but I had heard a long time ago that these things were possibly effective. And I don't know, after a weekend of eating these things on the hour, a big part of my cold has disappeared, Now, is it causation? Is it correlation? I don't know. But I'm a fan of these things. now I'm going to be a regular consumer of these things now. So just another product endorsement.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like your life's improving with nicotine and airborne gummy bears.
Better living through chemistry, Luke.
Yep. And Laponia says, this is why I like Elliott. Saw the seething rage just below the surface.
Yes, but you'd never know it. Beneath the sunny exterior lies a nuclear core, this molten nuclear core of just frothing liquid heat.
Wow.
So anyway, that's all I got.
How are you dealing with all the storms and flooding?
Oh, to me, it's majestic. I mean, it's like it's like everyone turned the vibrancy and the contrast up on life. It's this just ongoing drama where danger lurks at every corner. Like there's trees that have just fallen over like drunks, just not like they were broken off, but they just kind of fell over like they were like flagpoles in the ground and someone knocked them over. Like the roots are just completely exposed, but the tree is completely flat on the ground. Have you ever seen this? This is purely a California thing. This doesn't happen on the East Coast. The environment is just electric. So these big storms will come, and there's thunder and lightning, which is really rare in California. And then this band of sun will come in for a few hours. So you get like rainbows, and there's this just sweet smell in the air, and the sea is raging, and it's exciting, Luke. It's a great time to be alive. I love these storms.
Yeah. As long as I'm dry and safe and don't have to travel, I love them too.
Yeah, you've seen the pictures, the landslides and the floods, and it's supposed to continue for another week. It's amazing, but Southern California is going to get the brunt of the next round. So when do you return?
End of January.
So you'll have missed it. Are you on a floodplain in LA, or are you safe?
I'm safe, bro. Poor people live on floodplains.
That's right. They don't soar with the eagles in Pico Robinson.
I live in the high ground of Pico Robinson.
Yeah. Man, I want to turn the camera back on so you can see some of this.
Okay, go ahead. Let's try it.
We'll see what happens.
Let's live large.
All right, here we go. Can you see the bridge?
You have to turn your camera on.
Oh, it's not on?
No.
Oops. It is on. Oh, sorry, bro. All right. No, it is on. Okay, it's probably on, but it's not.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, that's spectacular.
Yeah, and you can see like the clouds and then the mist.
Oh, is that the Golden Gate? Is that the Golden Gate there?
That's the Golden Gate, bro. The one and only. One of the wonders of the world, Luke.
Oh, man.
Doesn't it make it? Don't you get tings of nostalgia from your days with the 49ers?
I do. I mean, that's gorgeous. Time for a swim?
Those guys just went out. They're out there. You probably can't see them, but like 3 guys went out in this, which I told them they were crazy. But because not only are the waves big, but you get a lot of runoff into the ocean, and that water is not clean. Like, water that's washed off the street. I don't want to. I wouldn't expose myself to that. But yeah, I'll give you the pan view. Like, there's Jack Dorsey lives up there, and here's Mark. I'll show you this. See the orange house?
Yes.
That's Mark Benioff lives there. This is an elite neighborhood.
Wow,
what's with the Eagles? Bro.
What's the name of the neighborhood?
Seacliff.
Seacliff. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Thank you for sharing this.
You're welcome, dude. Just another vicarious experience. Oh, look at this guy here. See this guy?
Yeah.
See him? He's gonna take a leak behind the tree.
Okay,
leave him alone. So No cottaging on this
Yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah. This is a no cottaging stream.
That's right. So look at all this driftwood just everywhere. I don't know. Sometimes you just things are better left uncommented upon.
Okay,
So
Elliot.
anyway, dude, I think that's all right.
Good to talk to you,
We'll
bro.
talk soon.
That was good, man.
All right, peace.
See,
All right, bye.
take care, bro. Take care. Okay. Do you guys know about the Twitch streamer, my fan, Amouranth? She now says her husband forces her to stream and controls her finances. So I'm a couple of months old on this story. Popular Twitch streamer, OnlyFans creator Amouranth said in an impassioned, tearful stream on Saturday she's being manipulated and abused by her husband. Her real name is Caitlin Siragusa. So she's always hitting the news for what's wrong with her life. I'm living in a fancy prison, she said on a live stream.
Why did you say you were going to kill my dogs?
Leave the house.
Okay, I can leave the... You know what? Actually, I shouldn't leave the house because my dogs are here.
We'll take the dogs and leave. You're asking the question, I'm telling you, and you're interrupting my fucking, telling you. Literally. Literally.
What are you saying? You just told me you were going to kill dogs if I didn't do a 24-hour stream.
Nope, did not say that. Now you're just fucking being a liar.
I'm not
I said I'm going to tell you what I said in terms of the earlier. Are you saying you did not say that?
I tried to tell you what I heard from you. And then you called me a liar.
Then you tell me, what did you say?
What are you even talking about? You brought up the dogs out of nowhere.
Exactly.
So what point is it you're proving?
See? You're proving my point right now.
What? I'm asking you. I don't even understand what you're saying to me.
I know. That's my point. My point is, are you listening or not? If you're not, then get the fuck out.
I'm literally listening, but you're not making any sense.
Well, no, you're not listening because it makes perfect sense. I'm going to say it one more time. If you don't get it, I need you to get the fuck out.
Whoa, so this is Amouranth and his part
Steven
two.
told him that it's a form of like psychological abuse and that I'm basically living in a fancy prison, and then he was changed for a bit, and then the hot tub meta arose, and he was like, oh, this is an opportunity, and then he turned into an asshole again when I agreed to commit to the grind because it was a good financial opportunity for us. I've been wanting to tell people that, like, let's just stream together. Just tell them that we're fucking married, because it's like, our relationship would be better if we just stream them, and it's fighting all the time. But no, mister, don't say that, because it's going to ruin the business model. It's not time yet. Fuck yourself. I'm done with it. I'm not going to fuck you anymore. You want me to tell them I'm single? It's about to be true, piece of shit. The therapist...
Wow, she sounds upset.
$1 million, and I'm going to take the rest, because I worked harder than you. It's like, and if you don't agree, then I'm going to burn it all in court. I'm going to put it all in fucking crypto. Blah. Just always threats. All the fucking accounts are like two-factor under his number, and he has all like the login information of things, you know? It's like keeps you there with the fear and the threats, and you fear that he's going to do something to your animals, and then he's nice again, and says everything's going to be okay. I'm going to leave you with $1 million, and I'm going to take the rest, because I worked harder than...
So there are all sorts of very nice men who would have been happy to have married Amouranth. But she wasn't interested in them. This was the type of guy that she's interested in.
When I say plan, do it. Dumb fuck, do you understand? Like, what plan are you talking about? It's like, fuck this, I'm calling you. So I disappeared from stream. Take a call. So I'm going to tell them I can't talk right now. We're getting Wi-Fi. I don't care. You get the call now. Last chance. About to dump your luggage. You know, from my hotel room. But throwing your stupid merch off the balcony. Proceeding to ditch your stuff. You don't need the makeup or the live view, like the stream epic, or the clothes, huh? Deleting social media in 1 minute. Buying options that expire and blasting the cash. About to shut down your bank account too. Lag is terrible. Stream is garbage. It's like,
about to delete Twitter in 30 seconds. If you don't call me, my phone's literally off, right? I'm just like, it literally died. Gonna donate $250,000 to Palomacy. It's like a bird sanctuary he likes. In the next 2 minutes, it's like the next time when I say plan, do it. Dumb fuck, do you understand? Like,
So sometimes I think that live stream either attracts unhealthy people or exacerbates some tendencies that were lying latent. So let's get back to the academic perspective. Here's Chris Kavanaugh having a chat with a nice man from Germany in the Decoding the Gurus genre.
And because it's this whole idea of a spectrum, and before you have the distress or whatever you use, you can still play games without being pathologic in the rest of your life.
Yeah, that sounds the reason. And I do think what Matt and I are doing, like hopefully without the kind of weird alien anthropologist perspective, is like it is a bit like that though for the gurus content, right? Because it's kind of like people don't really need to be explained in most cases why these people are appealing. Like they've got big audiences and people have hooked them out. But if you parachute in, it's often bewildering because there's all this stuff going on, and you're kind of like Scott Adams. That thing always stuck to me, like so many weird little things he's up to. And I don't know if you saw Scott Adams relatively recently had this thread about like you should kill your children if they get addicted. Like if you try and they can't be weaned off the drug, the correct thing to do is kill them. You didn't see this particular take, and like it was an extreme take that got him completely dunked on for good reason, because he was advocating murder. but it turned out like it was all connected to this. He had a stepson who recently died of addiction, and they tried to get him treatment or whatever, and they couldn't. And he had been the kind of like father figure raising him since he was a young boy, so he was obviously very badly affected by it. And I found that he'd done these live streams immediately after he found out the news, where he was kind of like breaking down crying in the live stream with the same kind of toxic audience that he has cultivated.
Yeah, so you cultivate a particular audience, all right? I'd like to think that I've cultivated an erudite, elevated, pro-social audience, and so I think I'm less likely, perhaps, than average to, be distressed by my audience. So, what is someone like Amouranth, a Twitch star? What is she going to transition to? The normal thing would be for her to transition to being a married woman. But, playing a single woman and prostituting yourself on OnlyFans has earned her millions of dollars. But the type of guy that you'll attract by doing so is usually not the most elevated. The most elevated, the best men for her are going to be turned off because of her pornographic past. So we often make these fairly dramatic decisions that then drastically reduce our options in life. So the very best men, again, have no interest in someone like Amouranth.
For his like little Periscope feed or whatever, but you could go and you could watch it, and it was like this weird kind of. It was like he very much needed that at that moment, in as much as he's kind of like lecturing the audience, and it kind of. It made me feel sorry for him, but like I know he's a terrible person and a manipulative guru, but it was also like he seems to, when he had a real moment of human tragedy and was at his like lowest, what he wanted to do was stream to his followers about it, and and then so it's a
there's nothing necessarily maladaptive about wanting to stream to your followers, right? There are some things that are appropriate to stream on, right? Generally speaking, seeking comfort for the death of a child, you would think for a normal person that you would go elsewhere other than to your social media crew. But if you want to explore ideas, if you do a stream that's primarily about ideas, events of the day, such as this one, then if you want to discuss and explore ideas, then turning to a live stream sounds ideal. If there was something that was personally distressing to me, the odds are about 100 to 1 that I would not primarily turn to a live stream to discuss them.
Weird kind of symbiotic relationship, I think, that's there sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know well enough, but for these people that they are like deeply, deeply needy, and they play all these games and do what they do to fill this gap in a way, to get the attention and or affection or whatever it is they want. So it's, I mean, it's deeply tragic. I mean, also, if I don't know.
Right. So if there's a massive hole in your soul, live streaming is not going to fill it, right? But if it's an addition to what's otherwise a life that's working for you, then it can be an absolutely wonderful addition. Like I consider live streaming an addition to my life. So I'll sometimes go weeks with hardly doing any live streams because what's going on in my life is plenty sufficient. But if your life feels empty and purposeless and meaningless without live streaming, obviously there's something wrong.
If you have read this book by Mary Trump, which I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but like the way they describe the family and the parents' generation, that was really interesting. And like if you showed any sign of weakness, you would be like belittled and heaped further shame upon you. And yeah, I mean, that's like.
Okay, talking about Mary Trump's book there about largely Donald Trump. So Lex Fridman, all right, his specialty is apparently AI, and it sounds like he's building a robot to love him. Or is it to love all of
Amouranth,
us?
I think, is also like semi-infamous for having interviews with people that are on the fringes and not really, pushing back much. So yeah. But a genuine, very smart guy with very influential theories and stuff. So no denying that. It just doesn't mean that you therefore have to assume that they're right about everything.
Roger.
No, especially, and we're getting off topic here, but especially kind of in this latter part of their career, like a lot of the time with these hard sciences, they do genuinely amazing and important stuff. Maybe aged up to 40 or something, right? And then they sometimes can spend the next 20 or 30 years doing the circuits and writing increasingly hand wavy books. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So what about Lex? I would say Lex, he didn't go into it in this content, but I think he does actually claim to have various, like even that thing about the deep work, what he's up to. He's very much presenting it like he's working on revolutionizing various things, and that
he's doing something amazing with that deep work. We don't know exactly what, but it's going to be big.
Yeah, and I think it might be building a love AI, a love bot. I think that's what he's up to. So,
someone to love him.
Just not Matt. No, more like like in the Age of Ultron and Avengers, where they wanted to build a robot shield around the Earth. Lex wants to build a robot to hug us all, just to wrap us all up in the warm blanket and tell us that we're all right. So yeah, so I'm putting him at 3. Is that he didn't? I didn't see a huge amount of it in this content, but I kind of sensed it. Like an X-Man.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah. So, right, Lex Fridman his specialty is AI, right? So, and his philosophy of life is all about the love. So maybe Lex will combine love and AI and create a love robot.
Like that does something with people, and they're very needy, and they're human, and it's I mean, I don't follow all the internet stuff. I mean, I listen to you guys, I listen to Jane. But I mean, it makes you also feel. I don't like how they're dehumanized often online, because they are human as well, and they try to cope with life in a way, and they are stuck in the solution they found, but it's not a sustainable solution how they deal with it. It doesn't make the problems go away, but
yeah. Well, I forced you to be philosophical, Tobias, but I appreciate the feedback, and it was constructive criticism. So cheers for that, and
bye bye.
Yeah, ciao. So I share Tobias's feeling that it's important to view the gurus as humans, and there are people that seem to not remember that, but I also like I felt this when we talked with Robert Wright and some other people, that the insight that, like, Putin is a man, or Brett has cereal in the morning, or whatever. It's like, I know that, I know that, and like that's not why. It's kind of in the vein, not not as bad as this, but the kind of, oh, Hitler was happy into a vegetarian. It's like, those are not the salient reasons that people are upset with him. That like, and the same thing applies with Brett or Putin or Robert Wright, all on different levels of disagreement. So yeah, there seems, that's one thing that, like, I get frustrated at online, is like, I think there is that kind of us versus them dynamic, like, really hugely influential on Twitter and elsewhere. But that thing that keeps getting packaged as insight, that like that people that you disagree with are humans, like Trump is a human, or that kind of thing. I'm kind of like, who are the people that is, that blows their mind? Because it seems to be, and it's something that in the heterodox sphere they really like to emphasize. And I think that's why they end up, to a large part, so fixated on interpersonal relationships as this really important judge of character. And it, like, unless you're planning to leave your children in the hands of those people for like an evening or something, I don't think that's the best way to judge things. Because, like, that's the point, is that people can be very nice and charming and also, very decent to you, but they could be advocating like anti-vaccine stuff, or they could.
Okay, that's Chris Kavanaugh there from Decoding the Gurus, talking about, there's an element of commentary that always wants to emphasize, the humanity of everybody, and where does that get you? Right, here's a little bit from Richard Spencer and company, looking back at COVID. So this was recorded December 4.
Abortion, I would give them that, but they want to do that anyway, and they want to do that everywhere. But if you depopulated the planet,
it's less consumers.
Wages would fly up. Yeah.
Yeah, and the entire system. It's a system that's based on like consumerism and expanding goods and services. It's an infinite growth model, which isn't sustainable. It's not possible. But that's the entire neoliberal. Like, the entire system is built on an infinite growth model. Therefore, we need more people to buy more goods and services. Therefore, we need more people.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just couldn't. I was on the phone. I was just like, dude, are you serious? Like, what is going on here? Then I tried to explain to him, like, he went to the whole COVID is a bioweapon, but yet Fauci engineered it purposely. And I'm like, dude, this makes no sense. I'm like, why would they engineer a quote bioweapon with such a shitty fatality rate? Number one, and number two, it's like, to destroy the economy, to give people gibs and get people used to getting gibs, like expanded. It just didn't make sense to me.
What they said is that they want to they engineered COVID, and they want to keep the lockdown going endlessly. But that's just been proven incorrect. It's like, you had a hypothesis, it has been proven incorrect. Like, they clearly don't want to keep lockdowns going on forever. And I remember having these conversations with the group kind of before I got in Substack, and that was when COVID was raging. There was a little more, I felt a little more pushback, which is fine. I mean, I do think that, like, needless to say, COVID policy was bad and deserving of criticism, but no one was wacky or anything like that. Or if they were wacky, they realized they didn't want to bring it up with me. But like, there's a thesis that they want to keep you locked down forever, and they want to endlessly mask you, and they want to do whatever. And it's like, that's been disproven. They don't want that.
And plus, like, now COVID cases, the hospitals, you're starting to see COVID cases creep up with these various variants. Yes. I can't get into the technical scientific jargon, but some of these vaccines, with the way the cells are coded, they're like not as effective. Perhaps somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So that's problematic. But still, the whole neoliberal, it's like, even the way we operate, even the way the United States operates in the Western world, it's like sort of, oh, it's your choice to mask. It's your choice to die or not. So there is no real policy at like a social level to protect people. Not really,
Right.
Not even ventilation in schools. So
I would disagree slightly with Johnny. Hello, Richard. Hello, Johnny.
Hey,
everybody else. Hi, happy New Year. Happy New Year. In one respect, I'm obviously very far from believing that Fauci engineered COVID. But if I were to engineer a bioweapon, again, in retrospect, I mean, if you haven't done it and you haven't gone through, if we hadn't gone through COVID, I wouldn't have thought that way. But in retrospect, as you look at the effects of COVID on Western society specifically, it would have been a perfect bioweapon. Not in the sense, I mean, Johnny mentioned low mortality rate, and that's precisely, like, if you look at infectious diseases with very high mortality rates, like Ebola, they cause very little damage. Even some of the flus in the past 20 years, they cause very little damage, because high mortality rate means low transmission rate, because you die before you get a chance to spread it to many people. So the societal effect is negligible. So Ebola was never a big deal. I mean, at best, you'd have a village in Africa die out of it, and maybe 2 people before they gang up on it and isolate it, and that's it.
It's sort of a shitty way to go, though, right? Ebola.
Yeah, it is a shitty way to go.
It is true. What Boris is saying is true. It's a I remember writing about this back in 2020. And it's a delicate balance, because if the virus, I mean, the virus, many people don't consider a virus to be alive. In fact, I think it probably should be considered a life form. But regardless, it undergoes evolution. And so it kind of, there are billions of viruses all around us right now, in fact. And they kind of say, with that great of numbers, you're going to kind of figure out this happy medium. And it is true. If it's too insanely severe, it is not going to reproduce. Like all life forms, it wants to reproduce itself. And so there is a kind of natural tendency for it to, be just deadly enough, basically.
And if it's not
right,
if it's
problematic enough, right?
Yeah, if it's too deadly, you wouldn't have the anti-vaxxer movement. You wouldn't have kind of the denial movement, people saying that it's something that shouldn't be taken seriously. People would be basically of a single mind over it. Yeah, it's dangerous, it's bad, we need to nip it in the bud. What the precise reason why we had such a rift in society, why half believe that it's a big deal and the other half believe it's something that was concocted in a lab and it's not big. Well, actually, it's interesting that the other half that believes that it was bioengineered and it's a
I would always point this out. The exact
they also
same
believe
people
it's not a big deal.
who said don't worry about it also theorized that Kim Jong-un created it. It's
Right,
like,
exactly.
guys.
Yeah, there's some pretty sharp analysis from Richard. Yeah, it was engineered in a biolab, and it's not a big deal.
We obsess over the Wuhan lab and all that stuff. So, you have this incredible societal division that has happened in the past 3 years, precisely because the society couldn't agree on how bad it is and how you should deal with it.
But imagine if it was a serious bug. Imagine.
Okay, and a little later in this live stream, it sounds like Richard is drinking pretty heavily again.
And I do think it is like, the supply chain stuff doesn't seem to be going away. It does seem to have been like a permanent dislocation.
Just shows how fragile our supply chains have become in this whole same day delivery scheme we live under now.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of scary, quite frankly, just from a national security standpoint. I mean, right? Yeah. I've heard rumblings too. I have a friend, not to get too doxy, but let's just say he's a mechanic for he's a mechanic for the federal government, let's just say. And he told me, he was like, there are certain ball bearings and certain components they still can't get for some of the trucks and stuff. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how far out are we? He's like, yeah, dude, we still can't get it. We have to go overseas and they're backed up. And I was like, wow.
Well, don't you think also, and I think this is generally a good thing, don't you think that like a real decoupling with China started with COVID or was catalyzed by COVID or accelerated by COVID? So for instance, for instance, last night I went to this kind of like New Year's Eve kind of downtown Whitefish party thing where they had like a dance, floor and all this kind of stuff. And I just, my friend and I, we were just talking. There's this kid at the bar who we just struck up a conversation with, and he's like 23 years old, and he's working for Applied Materials, which has a branch not too far away from Whitefish, believe it or not. There was a manufacturing center there, and I think Applied Materials bought it up, and so they are making machines that make machines or something like this. But it is, he was explaining it to me. Granted, I was, drinking fairly heavily, so I might have forgotten most of it, but really fascinating stuff, just like the level of precision down to the atom. And, I found it fascinating. He was this young, kind of energetic kid. But, we were talking about the CHIP Act, and he was like, well, I'm a big libertarian Republican, but, the CHIP Act was good, and that is a major thing. I mean, that's probably going to bring at least a few billion to this valley for, just for an instance among many. And over the course of a decade or so. I mean, it's a major thing. It is a definite attempt to like bring what was offshored here in the United States. And, even the lab leak theory, I mean, I guess I'm fairly agnostic on this. I have read some of the major works on this, and I'm pretty much, I find them convincing. I mean, or at least compelling. I am not going to say anything definitive or not, but the lab leak theory was endorsed by someone in government. I think it might have been the Surgeon General who said, I'm speaking here as an individual and this is speculative, but I endorse the lab leak theory. Now, Fauci has not, and Fauci might, Rand Paul is not entirely wrong going after Fauci for the gain of function stuff that was being funded by the US government, but anyway, National Institute of Health. But, even that kind of adds to the decoupling. There's the Taiwan situation. It seemed to, and the US media portrayed China in these massive lockdowns as fairly grotesque and heavy-handed. So I don't know. I think, the Great Reset, it's like, what is that exactly? Like, what is it really? What not? Don't listen to all these conspiracy theorists and stuff like this. It might very well be something that I, for one, completely endorse, and I think most conservatives would endorse, and that is a slow decoupling from China. So, I think Richard, it might be a good thing. Yeah.
That's interesting you brought that up. I totally agree. But to bring back, just to give you an example, I'm here in Italy with my family, visiting my family.
Okay, so decoupling from China, and reshoring American jobs was started approximately 4 years before COVID hit. It's just accelerated since COVID. So we are reshoring millions of jobs because with America's manufacturing and technological prowess, it is now frequently cheaper to manufacture in the United States than overseas. You don't have to deal with all the storm and drag of supply chains. So we are reshoring jobs and we are steadily decoupling from China. Apple, makers of the iPhone, steadily decoupling from China. Right, let's go back to Chris Kavanaugh here from Decoding the Gurus. Oh, so Richard, generally speaking, he sounds a lot more sober than he did 2014 to 2018, but he calls himself a functioning alcoholic, and he sounds like he still drinks heavily at times.
Could be, promoting right-wing figures, and this comes up with like Chris Williamson, for example, because we got on quite well with him in the interview that we did with him, and subsequently we're still in contact with him. And if you look at his output, it would be somewhat disappointing from what you saw in the interview. But like in the interview, I also feel like is strongly focused on metrics and growing his channel, and and has a men's health kind of primary focus to his output. So it would have been naive to expect that he would have a conversation with us and then we completely shift his output. And so like
So Chris Williamson, who the heck is that? Well, this is the bloke that I was playing a little earlier, where he was interviewing a Harvard professor about how do women compete when it comes to mates, right? So they tend to be a lot nicer ostensibly than men, but how do women compete for partners? This is Joyce Benenson of Harvard, and this is Chris Williamson's show here.
If you look across a lot of primate species, males always are trying to be better than one another because they get more mating success. So whoever's on top gets to mate with the most females, and they leave their genes, and those genes are trying to get to the top. So that's what gets left. Across primates, there's almost no exceptions to that. I mean, there's very many different kinds of social organizations and so forth, but that's how it goes. For females, it's quite different because there's two societies that cause very different effects in females. In one, you live with your kin for your whole life. That's fabulous. You have coalitions. You put down others who are not your kin. You put down lower ranked members of your kinship group, and you have your allies for life. You're born.
Okay, so that's just a brief excerpt from Chris Williamson's podcast. It was being referenced there by Decoding the Gurus. He even appeared on Decoding the Gurus. He got right reply when he was being critiqued. So the Gurus, Decoding the Gurus are a couple of centre-left academics, Matt Brown in central Queensland, Australia, and Chris Kavanaugh from Ireland, who now lives in Japan. I believe each of these two centre-left academics are married to Japanese women.
I think men's rights. Yes, fair point, Amber. Maybe not just that, but I think Douglas Murray or Michael Malice, like the insights that they have to offer, or even worse than that, Sargon Novikad, right, are not minor issues. But it's also the case that I think you should notice that interpersonal relationships skew how you react to things, and they do. They can blunt your criticism. They can make it hard to be cruel or critical. But it can also be the case that you can say, look, we really like this person, but we really don't like what they do or what they think. And I think the conversation we have with Robert Wright was like that, because we do like Bob, do think he's a reasonable person, but
right, it's not easy to be fighting with the people that you live stream with, and so if you can't criticize someone, all right, and maintain a friendship, then it's going to be very difficult to live stream with them. So generally speaking, I've kept some distance from the people I live stream with, and I've very rarely brought friends onto a live stream. But if you do bring friends onto your live stream, then they have to be able to take the criticism. And if they can't take the criticism, then you have to either choose live streaming or friendship, but you can't do both.
Still just really widely disagree with his position on the Ukraine conflict and Taiwan and just in general. So yeah, Philip, what did you perhaps idea can be insane even on normal humans? Yes, Mark, this is right. So normal humans can promote insane ideas. People who don't know anything considered. Oh yeah, so Philip Morglin. Philip, is that how you pronounce your surname? You don't have the ability to respond, so I'll ring it. Look, I got it right. See, people today were talking about the parallels with Lab Leak and the 9/11 Truther movement, which have been, I think, evident for quite a significant amount of time. But
yeah, parallels between lab leak proponents and the 9/11 truther movement. Well, I always found the 9/11 truther movement absolutely absurd. Never gave it like 3 seconds of serious consideration. Lab leak seems like a much more serious and possible hypothesis. So I don't see these similarities.
I'm I'm also interested in the fact that at the minute, you know, like when I saw the parallels with the lab leak movement and 9/11 and other conspiracy movements, one thing to me was like a sense of oh no, like, because if you ever interacted with 9/11 truthers or climate change skeptics, what they have is like an excess of will and energy to fixate on a topic and to make it like to make any.
And why do people have so much excess of will and energy to fixate on a topic like 9/11 truth? Because they're losers, right? If they were normal, healthy people, gainfully employed with educations to pursue, job skills to gain, families to look after, they wouldn't be so single-mindedly focused on 9/11 truth nonsense.
Discussion of that topic painful because they have an endless reserve of energy for litigating the smallest details. And
same true with Rand Paul. When Ron Paul, when Ron Paul was running for the Republican nomination for U.S. president, you say anything mildly skeptical of Ron Paul, and an entire posse would just descend on you. So, what kind of politician has such energized followers? Frequently is people who don't have much else going on for them.
Even for litigating every detail that has already been debunked or whatever, like it doesn't matter. It will just be recited. And so when I seen that, I was kind of like, I don't want this again. I don't want like another endless threads about intelligent design or that kind of thing. And that's where we are, right? Like that, you see the people like Alejandros Marinos or even Alina Chan and that kind of thing, that I'm not saying they definitely would have been 9/11 truthers, but all of the kind of approach is very similar. And it's interesting to me is like people like Philip and some of the other academics have remarkable levels of stamina for dealing with those people. And Philip in particular, you are somebody who goes you go very hard at times at people, and you're like painting a huge target on yourself from that community. And you're burned out. Well, I feel like you have taken the right angle recently because together with like Sam Gregson, like you have been doing the podcasts and interviews with the other scientists, and that to me seems like the ideal response, because that's you having discussions with experts about those topics and addressing the things, and the conspiracy theorist wing are not there. They're not like invited to the table, so they're only kind of they're like seething on the outside that you are able to have these conversations, especially with the people that they want to levy that they are all they were all secretly responsible for the pandemic and that kind of thing. And I saw Brett.
Okay, so there are these anti-Jewish flyers that went up all over Claremont College, and the flyers contains a quote that Al Goldstein gave to me. Al Goldstein back in 1998 told me the only reason that Jews are in pornography is that we think Christ sucks, Catholicism sucks. So Jewish on Campus tweets, white supremacist organization distributed these flyers near Claremont College. While not on campus, these anti-Semitic flyers threaten the Jewish students who attend nearby. Anti-Semitic propaganda is dangerous and inflammatory. Don't fall for it. Well, that would be really helpful if a Twitter account called Jews on Campus lets you know that this anti-Semitic propaganda is dangerous and inflammatory. Don't fall for it. That will really nip it in the bud. So we've got Gary Kremen here. So I know Gary Kremen well. I know Adam Glasser well. He told me that he always prefer to hire Jews. Mike Kulik. So Mike Kulik is now dead, I believe, but I knew him fairly well. Nathan Abrams. an academic. I'm aware of him. Ron Jeremy. So apparently Ron Jeremy has such bad dementia that he's considered unfit for trial. I didn't see dementia when I was interacting with Ron Jeremy, talking to him up to 2007. Who else do we have on here? Ruben Sturman. I never met Ruben, but I know his son, David. Steve Ornstein, founder of Wicked Video, so lightly affiliated Jew. I've spoken to Steve Ornstein many times. But does the Twitter account Jewish on Campus really think that by letting people know that this anti-Semitic propaganda is dangerous and that people shouldn't fall for it, that a single mind will be changed?
Like occasionally when I haven't noticed what Brett and Eric...
Well, obviously that would make no sense, but maybe this is good to fundraise off. So I don't like the perspective of people are stupid, they're doing something stupid. I want to try to find rational reasons behind what people are doing. So the rational reason is that they can fundraise, that they need to warn people about this dangerous propaganda.
Grow up to, I'll just be like, okay, I wonder what they've been doing recently. And I saw both of them were essentially, like Eric was implying that the CDC had lied to everyone and that he did this thing which he often does where he writes these really interminably long threads where the point that he's trying to make is really simple, but he casts it in the most obscure, jargon-filled way and the most roundabout way to say basic criticisms. And he basically wanted to suggest that the CDC...
I agree with Kavanaugh here in that one of the tip-offs that you're dealing with a slippery and untrustworthy character is when they use all sorts of fancy terminology and fancy words when simpler words would do. But when people invoke, really big fancy words unnecessarily, you're talking about people who are insecure about their intelligence level and who are trying to show off. And generally, these people are not so reliable.
Had, completely failed in its mission, and it seemed to be linked to that the recent variants were not as didn't have as bad effect as some people had predicted, and this completely discredited the CDC or whatever. Like, some very Weinsteinian take was like, okay, so Eric is attempting to discredit the CDC. What's Brett up to? And go across, and he was suggesting that Fauci through funding gain of function experiments was responsible for a holocaust of lives and so on in the pandemic. So he would, and he referenced Daszak and that kind of thing. So in his world, it is kind of now established fact that the coronavirus came from a lab and that it was directly linked to Fauci's allowing funding for things that fall under gain of function. So and Brett's mind works like that, like these little, it's this evil guy Fauci that has become a villain on the right. So it's definitely him. And then it's this guy Daszak, it has to be these kind of nefarious villains. And the interesting thing for me was that he talked about a holocaust of lives, but Brett at the same time wants to say that basically all official statistics are unreliable, right, about how many deaths there've been and whatnot. And to the extent that basically he thinks all of the deaths attributed to the virus have been overreported, and that all of the deaths related to side effects from vaccines have been underreported or suppressed. So when he talked about a holocaust of lives and the disruption of society or whatever, I was kind of thinking Brett's not consistent anyway, so he could easily just be invoking convenient concept that is contradictory to his more general worldview. But I think that he was wanting to endorse that people have died, but also he counts within that deaths from vaccines and disruption to lives from lockdowns and that kind of thing. So when he's talking about the Holocaust caused by the COVID situation, it's not the kind of intuitive position that you might have about the millions of people that have died worldwide from COVID. I think it's more he is thinking if we had allowed people to provide ivermectin to everyone, that this wouldn't have been a worldwide pandemic. The fact that people were generally not prohibited from using ivermectin and then he did use it in lots of countries, it doesn't matter. These kind of facts don't matter. So the Weinsteins are, as always, yeah, live, as Mark says, ivermectin works better when you take it live on the air and with security goggles for safety when you're going to break it up.
Well, I agree here with Chris's analysis that Eric and Brett Weinstein are just two of the worst pundits and secular gurus on social media.
Cut up the dosage in half. So the Weinsteins as ever are just, very unique people. So yeah. Let me see, Philip. I don't know if you're capable of, I'll invite you up anyway, since I've talked around you. Oh, look, you have your proper podcast, so you have a high quality.
I'm now properly equipped after all the interviews. Actually, next Friday I have another one. So yeah, we switched, like you said, strategy because, arguing at some point is, fruitless. And now what we do, we just go to all the people that are involved in the conspiracy and talk to them and then, try to humanize them. So we started switching, what we wanted to do because clearly, at some point, all the other conspiracies, evidence doesn't change the fact anymore, right? People believe whatever they want, and they will just make another cycle of conspiracy on top. So we decided to, you know what, we just, we interview all these people. I mean, we've been in contact with them. I mean, there's some private chats going on that are hilarious. I had to stop now because it just takes so much out of my game. But if you're like, on a signal chain with Angie and Stuart and Christian, they talk a lot of smack, and they know exactly, what losers the people are that come at them. So it's like,
well,
that's fun.
The thing about that is that, for the people that are like the Lab League people, they imagine those things exist, right? They imagine there's these back channels and there's these secret conversations where people are, but like what their image is versus the reality is always so wildly askew. Like they are imagining, Anderson and Fauci like kind of secretly plotting how are we going to convince the world about things, and if you have been an academic or whatever, like, so whenever I see the email chains that people always get really exercised about, it's exact same with the climate change things, where like sometimes people have chosen like wording which is regrettable, right? Or they used an offhand comment, but like the notion that, so the Kevin Anderson one is the one that always comes up, right? Because he said this looks artificial or whatever to me, and then a couple of days later had changed his position, and people are like, it would be impossible for him to review evidence and change position, and then I was like, why would that be impossible? First of all, it says in the very email something like, but we need to run tests.
Yeah, so that's funny, because this exact email he writes, at first glance it looks like, not what we would expect, so we have to look at the lab leak. So Christian was concerned early that it could have been a lab leak, right? And then it said, in the same email they quote out, oh, it looks, not consistent with evolutionary expectation, but then he said, but we are just at the beginning of it, we're going to look at it and expect our minds to change the more we learn, in the same email, but they never quote this part.
And also like this notion where he had, because they also point out like, how could you have your mind changed in a conversation? Like, if somebody doesn't provide, and it's like, I listen to TWIV, and this is like listening to TWIV This Week in Virology. There's such an obvious level of expertise, right? The foundational level, because the way that people talk is they just talk in a way that like that I can't follow very often, because they share a baseline of expertise, and you can still see that like people get things wrong, right? Like sometimes somebody will start talking and then the other one will say, no,
that's
like
not how it works.
And I saw them discuss the furin cleavage site with someone who was like a specialist in furin cleavage sites, and they corrected all of the other experts about like how unexpected this was, and they were basically like, actually we have seen stuff like this in X, Y, and Z cases, right? And you could see them reacting and being like, oh, that's really interesting, actually I thought that was more novel, and blah blah. And that kind of conversation, like the thing is, it's readily accessible on TWIV. You can listen to experts. But the lab leakers kind of act like virologists could never do that. Like no virologist could learn a new fact and be surprised by it and change their mind on a topic. And the guys on TWIV have like, lifetimes of careers in virology. They're very smart people, and they still like make mistakes or learn new things. It's just like, and then Kevin Anderson, not only that, I know you know all this, but
okay, TWIV he's referring to as the podcast This Week in Virology.
Just say like, he then was an author on a publication where he explained the publication clearly outlines why he doesn't think it's an artificial virus, right?
Okay, so obviously the experts aren't always going to be right, but you probably should pay some attention, listen to them if you think you've got a revolutionary theory, right? So experts aren't always right, but generally speaking, it pays to bet that way.
So like, if you want to understand which evidence convinced him, there's a paper with his name on it, saying this is the evidence that convinced me.
I mean, it's really and it's really like, it's like with the climate change conspiracies, right? They look at the paper, they quote pick, a line out of it, and then say, this fundamentally destroys everything. It's like, it doesn't have the power, right? It's like,
Well, the climate is obviously changing. It's such a slippery, dishonest word, right? The climate is always changing, right? Nobody who's moderately intelligent can deny that the climate is changing. And it seems also fairly obvious that things that people have done over the past 300 years, that seems fairly obvious by the 1890s, that things that we're doing, such as putting increased carbon into the atmosphere, are affecting the climate. Now, climate is changing in many ways for the good, and in some ways it appears to be changing for the worse. But it's indisputable the climate's changing. I think it's fairly obvious that things that people are doing, such as putting increased carbon into the atmosphere, are affecting the climate. But in many cases, the climate is being affected for the good. In certain realms, you'll now be able to grow crops that you couldn't before. All right. Overall, far more people die from cold than die from heat. So overall, if the planet warms, right, many parts of the planet will be better off. Some parts of the planet will be worse off. Overall, it depends on the situation.
Pick a cherry-picked result, and it's like, okay, this is like everything is gonna crumble now, or the paper changed the sentence from peer-reviewed to final publications, because they wrote like 120 pages, they had to reduce it down. It's like, they don't write this thing anymore, and it's like, yes, it's just in a supplementary because they had to reduce it down, and it's like,
the wording changing from a preprint to a publication, that was taken as like a huge smoking gun, and I was like, that you guys are insane. That is completely normal. It's a completely standard thing. And the other one that happened with that paper was, and you were directly involved with that, because the journalist, what's her name, Jane Q, because she wrote a not, it wasn't even critical. It was just like offering, like when they quote people in articles saying, however, some scientists disagree with this.
Are not convinced because there's still some uncertainty, a very narrow uncertainty upstream, and some scientists would like to see more, so they don't,
exactly
they keep the mind open, basically. Yeah.
So that's a normal thing, and like there was on Twitter, there was like some back and forth between Jane and like some of the authors, right?
Yeah.
And there was like a little bit where she might have accidentally or intentionally, either way, but like implied that somebody wasn't very well qualified to like assess and that like ruffled feathers, but like. This is normal, right? Like this is a completely normal thing to happen, that somebody covers something and the authors like think, oh, you're suggesting there's more disagreement than there actually is, or whatever. And the science journalist being like, no, actually there are people that disagree, right? This is a normal thing. But the lab leak people were so excited by that. They were like, hey, look, it's falling apart. Like
it's all falling apart. And it was not even a disagreement. I was just saying, look, you wrote it in a certain way that seemed like, there's a bigger disagreement. It isn't. I was worried about false balancing, right? And she said, look, I looked very deeply. I talked to people, and this is their things. But but the problem is, of course, when people take stuff out of context, right? It's very hard if you make a very nuanced argument. It's very difficult. And she made a nuanced argument, but of course, people did not jump on the nuanced argument. They jumped on the, oh, look, she says there's some scientists that disagree. But what they disagreed about specifically was a very minor thing, which was like, we have one study about two lineages, and some people would like to have more evidence for that, not just modeling. And people like everything falls apart. And it's like, no, that's not true. That doesn't do anything like that. So yeah, and this gets weaponized online for like 2 spins, and then suddenly you have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of engagement from all the people, all the right-wing networks, basically. Now she's the hero there, and she herself, right, hey, the consensus is zoonotic spillover. Everybody I talk to said zoonotic spillover. What are you doing to me? And it's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible how you get abused. No matter what you write, you can get abused by motivated actors.
Yeah. And like this is the, there are characters on that network. Some of them are genuinely like, there are people in the lab leak, just as there are in the 9/11 truther community and so on, who are genuinely pretty dark people. Like they'll target people and like.
Okay, so who's more dark? Like who targets more people? Is it the right or the left? I'm not sure. It certainly seems like on certain issues, the right-wing distant right is more dark in targeting and doxing and trying to destroy people. At other issues, it's the left. I guess it all depends upon what issues you hold sacred. So apparently the United States Pentagon is rescinding its vaccine mandate. So I assume this is based on our evolving understanding of medical science. So in retrospect, all those vaccine mandates certainly set off a storm of opposition. Did they do much good? I'm skeptical of that.
Yeah.
They regard you as being part of like something fundamentally evil. And so it's legitimate for them to like try to find out details about your family or
I mean, it's like, and it's really scary actually, because I mean, I have no followers, and still I had some people stalking me, writing, everybody that I was affiliated with, that I'm a pedophile because I posted a picture of ice cream with my daughter. It's like, why, it's like absurd.
Okay, so if you want to play in the public space, all right, there's going to be pushback. That's part of the price to pay for being public. So I don't want people to be nasty. I don't like the type of behavior they were just decrying. That is the price you pay for sticking your head above the parapet.
Right, totally absurd things, and they were following me around for like 2 days, tagging me in every conversation, harassing me, calling me, everything. Is like, and I'm a nobody, a freaking nobody. Imagine the people that are actually, like virologists like Angela Rasmussen, who's also a female on top of that. I mean, she gets called, an ugly fat whore that is compromised TCP shield, hundreds of thousands of times, I don't know. It's insane. And then imagine the people that are actually involved in the conspiracy, like Dashak, right? It's like, it's absurd dynamics.
There's an interesting thing, because like there are ways that are pretty well set out about how to harass people online, and like one way to do it is like to tag them and employers and that kind of thing, and because like if you create hassle for people, in most cases, like
they will stop engaging.
So I would think that the happier someone is, the less likely they are to engage in this horrible behavior described. So generally speaking, marginalized people are attracted to marginalized movements. People in marginalized movements are enjoying or suffering from an excess of spare time, whether you're marginalized on the right or the left. And so because you've got so much spare time, because your ties with normal human connection are so frayed, right? Because you're a marginalized person to begin with, your hold on reality is shaky. So the more marginalized the person, right, the more likely they are to engage in this horrible behavior.
And also they like their employment thing or whatever, those people aren't online, right? So like if you can organize email campaigns or whatever to people's like employment address, you can create genuine difficulties with like fairly minimum effort. And like in my case, I had this one, there was a Japanese account which kind of followed me, and it was interesting because it's one of the few accounts that like just wrote to me in Japanese, right? And it got no engagement, but and it was called something like I'm a Japanese troll. Right? And it was like a very also weird account that was like highly into IDW stuff in Japan, which is weird in Japan, but I like kind of enjoyed it from the anthropological perspective, because it was just like, okay, there's this kind of weird Japanese account which is into all this stuff, knows about James Lindsay and stuff, but it kind of follows around. But that account, in part because it's Japanese, like could easily locate my kind of
your like, work address and
then like start at one point when like ever I said something that annoyed it or whatever, started like send your emails to this department and thing, and like nobody was paying attention, but it was just kind of like, okay, like that's not cool. You don't do that, because like why? And it was over some very, I can't remember what the minor thing was, I wrote something too critical of Peter Boghossian or whatever, right? Like it was a very stupid thing, but you just like these kind of things can really trigger people.
So what I noticed actually, so there's always a certain amount of crazy people online, right? This is normal, but there are some people that, especially in the lab leaguers like Matt Ridley or Lina Chan, that purposefully quote something out of it for people to get harassed. So if you criticize them, then they tweet something out, and then they say this person is a liar, they did it to everybody, and then they know, because then they know that all these trolls will have a target, right? And then they go for you. So you never will see a Matt Ridley write something on toward, or a Lina Chan, but what we do, they endorse and they amplify all the people that are harassing their critics. So and this is really like this is so I was not aware of that before I got involved in this thing.
Well, the more you feel like you're at war, then the more okay you're going to be with people on your side doing heinous things.
This really has a chilling effect. I mean, most scientists don't want to get involved in that.
Oh, so there are no chilling effects from left-wing activism for right-wing scholarship? Right? These guys live in such a bubble. They only see things from, one narrow partisan perspective, right? The genetic basis of crime, right? What role do genetics play in the committing of crime, right? You can't get funding for that. You can't pursue research on that. IQ and group differences, it'd be very difficult to get funding on that, or to pursue that as an academic career. So all sorts of right-wing forms of scholarship get squashed immediately. Absolutely no chance because of left-wing harassment.
That's kind of shit, because not every time, you say, hey, look, what you're writing is not true. It's different. You don't want to, expose yourself to suddenly for 48 hours get hundreds of messages from people harassing you. And, maybe you do that once or twice, but after that, you're like, okay, I'm out. I'm not going to do Twitter anymore.
Okay, getting hundreds of messages, if that's not such a big deal, right? If people, show up to your workplace or to your home or to your house of worship and badger you and harass you and threaten you, right, that's more severe. Right? Just receiving hundreds of messages doesn't strike me as such a big deal.
I have better things to do with my life. And then you concede the space, right? They heckle you out of the conversation. And then online, it's like, then they are free to spend their lives. They say, it was never investigated, it was...
Yeah, this misaligned agent says, whoa, I thought these guys were right-wing judging by what they were complaining about. But no, these are a couple of left-wing academics complaining about right-wing trolls. But just as many people on the right have reason to complain about left-wing activists trying to shut down their scholarship and investigation.
It was all covered up. And if there's no counter speech, if there's no pushback, they won. And so it's very difficult actually to...
Yeah, these are left-wing guys. One's an academic, one I'm not sure. And they're complaining about skepticism of lab leak hypothesis for the origins of COVID, resulting in tremendous harassment for people who are skeptical of that hypothesis, from harassment from people overwhelmingly on the right.
To keep in there and keep your sanity, right? And all of us, as Stuart Neal and Angela Rasmussen, we are very stubborn people, and we still, kind of found each other by being harassed and supporting each other, because then it's a bit easier when you see, it happens to all of them. It's not something that I did particularly wrong, right? So it's a systematic thing.
Yeah, something that's, I totally get that. And you're completely right about that tactic of quote tweeting people to encourage pylons. And I also think that one more step, which I consider intelligent, but also reprehensible, is that there is this thing which sometimes people do where they kind of, they make a thread, for example, saying that people shouldn't harass people on their behalf. But the way that they use the language and also the infrequency of that message is such that they can seem to be taking a public stance which is above it all and wash their hands of it.
Yeah.
But they're actually doing a very bare minimum, and they're not doing if you wanted to, for example, really do that, you could do something
Okay, so if people do horrible things in the name of what you believe, that says absolutely nothing about whether or not what you believe is true. But you do have to take it into account. And generally speaking, if someone goes out there and commits some heinous massacre, you do have to think twice before you use the same or similar rhetoric to what he was using. So that's part of reality. You have to take it into account, not in terms of the truth or the goodness of what you believe, but in terms of how it comes across. How something comes across is an important part of the equation. How something comes across has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not what you believe is true or good, but it has something to do with the atmosphere and the society that we live in.
Directly say, I don't, anybody, doing this and this, I'm not going to accept that. And I'm going to call it out on my account, right? That would be showing that that you are interested in this topic, but you're not going to accept people being harassed. But they don't do that.
And on top of that, it's also right. It's not even that they don't discard it. They actively encourage it, right? And they know the people they encourage it. It's not just they just amplify any lab-leak thing. It's they amplify people that specifically target their critics. And also, those people that they push, they are not just lab leakers. They are 9/11 truthers, climate change deniers. It's the whole package, right? And they know. I would never follow a person like that. I would never amplify a person like and they.
So if you have beliefs that marginalized people kind of seize on and take to absurd lengths, then if your beliefs that you're articulating publicly and being frequently misused, and people use them to go off the rails, then you have to reconsider how you phrase things and the relative importance and the frequency and the intensity with which you state these beliefs. But of course, it has absolutely nothing to do with whether your beliefs are right or wrong.
They don't care as long as it's as long as they're on their side, they're gonna keep pushing and then shutting people down. And this is super unethical, because even when I wrote one article that was bit critical of so that name people. Usually I never name people. This is not my style, but I would one where specifically I said, look, these are the tactics people use, and I used some tweets to show this is how they do it. And then, I made very sure in the article, at the end of the article, and when I posted it, to say, look, I'm not advocating to harass those people. I'm not supporting of that. I don't want to create pylons. We have to be very careful when we name people not to create pylons. And all I want people is to not ignore them and mute them and never, write anything, don't amplify them, don't do anything. And this is, I think, then fair to say. But I've never seen this experience in the opposite way. It's always like, you criticized Alina Chan, you're free to.
Okay, that's nonsense that people on the right never, urge their followers to behave with civility.
Be shot on the street. So it's like, okay,
yeah,
thank you very much.
There is an interesting thing in her case specifically where I did see that when she did make some thread basically that was slightly more direct than her previous ones had been. And she said, I think she was basically saying, like, it might have even been directed at you, like, don't spend time with Philip Markelin and anymore. Like, these people aren't worth our time. And that seemed to actually have a significant effect for, like, people saying, okay, I'm not going to bother these, like, this guy isn't worth. I was like, wow, it's literally like if she says,
yes,
don't do that. The level
so,
of
why she wrote this? Because I luckily had a support network of people coming and saying, Alina Chan, are you really endorsing? Because this was one of the things where all the crazy trolls on her demand started attacking me as a sexist because she's
I'm kind of,
she's going to be a movie star.
I prefer just, even though I now know that and it's going to influence, I'm just going to pretend I don't know that because like I much prefer when I naively believe that people are just, that they're ideologically invested in something. Like it's a better world where that is motivation and like it doesn't come down to. I know that.
So these are people on the left. So they have a hard time with the nasty facts of human nature. People on the left tend to believe that people are basically good, and then society corrupts them. People on the right believe that people are basically not good, and society, to varying effects, helps to make people better. So I'm obviously on the right. I believe that people are born deeply, deeply flawed, and then family, community, and society tends to make people better.
There are all these, like it's the same as like the Weinsteins get like money, right, from
exactly
their takes. But like I'm just gonna ignore that and assume that everybody's acting out of like.
I think it's kind of an enforcing mechanism for their own beliefs, right? It's not that they don't necessarily believe what they are selling. I don't think they are necessarily that cynical. It's just that when do you see you get so much love, you get so much attention, you get so much money from what you're doing, you better start convincing.
Right. If your income, if your status, if the love that you're receiving depends upon you believing and articulating certain things, it verges on the impossible for you to start believing and saying the things that are bringing you income, status, and love.
Yourself that you actually believe in, what you claim to be believing, right? And I think this is just a very strong mechanism. If your whole, and also you have to think that these people, they live in a different echo chamber, they live in a different reality. So for them, they are winning and they are right all the time because clearly their money keeps increasing, their followers keep increasing, and all the information they see is shared from this circle.
So it looks like the media is going all in promoting the Ron DeSantis campaign. It's interesting how little negative stuff that the news media is publishing about Ron DeSantis these days. It feels like the media is pretty sure that a good, strong Ron DeSantis campaign would be absolutely stake in the heart for Donald Trump and his chances of being elected president of the United States. So we're getting very sanitized, selective, positive coverage of Ron DeSantis. Then as soon as Ron DeSantis is the presumptive Republican nominee, then the media will shift again, I suspect, and we'll just get a whole slew of negative stories about Ron DeSantis.
Circle of followers that believe what they believe. So for them, it really seems like, for Brett Weinstein, I'm certain that he lives in a reality where he was proven right again and again.
Yeah,
it's very easy to, it's very easy to believe that he's been vindicated on everything. The world is waking up to his genius. Especially if you're so narcissistic in the first place. This is, it's a drug. There is no way you can withstand it if you have these personality traits. But even people that don't necessarily have such strong narcissism, I'm pretty sure it's something that gets to your head. I mean, it
definitely does. And it is. And Tobias was asking like whether the lab leak is still a big topic. And I think it's a legitimate question because like it has escaped out of the, it was for a while like a mainstream.
And the chat said, what would happen if these two guys said something negative about COVID vaccines, right? Or what would happen if they said anything that transgressed against the egalitarian, secular left-wing world outlook? If they said, oh, we should investigate the genetic influence on crime, or we should discuss and we should be able to freely talk about group differences in IQ, group differences in educational attainment, group differences in work attainment, group differences in spending and earning and saving, group differences in how much your group pays into the tax base versus how much it takes out in social welfare spending, right? They would get absolutely crushed. Weird how on the right you have a lot of people who don't believe in evolution, yet they're far more realistic about human nature. Yeah. How can the left be so naive about human nature when they believe we're all animals? That's a great question.
Media focus, but I think now it's become pretty much the pattern that it will be in for the next couple of years, which is like a topic that reemerges every so often when somebody writes a contrarian article, or the Lab Leak movement gets a journal article through, or something like that happens.
So I think I disagree with that a bit, because I think Lab Leak has reached a prominence in the US. So worldwide, I agree. Lab Leak worldwide doesn't play a role. Most countries, in the German-speaking sphere, nobody cares about Lab Leak. In Brazil, Portuguese-speaking sphere, nobody cares. In Japanese, probably nobody cares. But
No one cares.
in US domestic politics, I mean, if the GOP takes the House, they will start subpoenaing people. I know that the people already are. They have to show up to witch trials in front of Congress in order to leverage this, let's speak, conspiracism for political gains, right? And so it's going to get worse, at least for the domestic market in the US. It's going to get worse, and it's going to be more prominent because it's going to be this huge thing where they can get attention for attacking scientists and making this witch hunt, this McCarthyist style witch hunt. So yeah,
it's one, Philip, you're probably right, which is extremely impressive, but like I think you're much more likely to be correct when you make that kind of prediction. But the other thing that's interesting to me is like, so the parallels with like climate change are very obvious, right? But the thing which is a bit different to me is like, and it shows it like an actual shift, is that you could view this in a way like 9/11 truther stuff, right? And I think that the 9/11 truther stuff, even though it did have support from some like fringe figures in the political world, it was always kept at arm's length, right?
Yes.
And like getting involved in it was seen as like unseemly and discrediting. But now that's not the case, right? Like involvement in conspiracy communities is very much part and parcel of like the modern like
GOP. Yeah, so that is the thing, right? Yeah, it's like they, for whatever reason, I guess it has to do with the attention economy. So this is something that I've been trying to work on now for a long time. I'm writing this article that will never finish. Is about what are these meta phenomena, these emergent meta phenomena that arise when you have attention economy, and it also expands beyond social media. Social media is very much like the avant-garde to a certain extent, a fully driven attention economy system. But it's not that mainstream media is not doing the same thing anymore. If you look at the Fox News, it's as terrible or the worst than most of social media is, right? So it's like it swapped over these dynamics that developed out of social media. They swapped over into the whole infosphere, and then now you cannot separate them anymore, because information, the way our information goes nowadays, it's a mix between bloggers, between mainstream media, between journalists. It's all kind of a connected mess, and so it's once you have these attention, so to bring it back to the conspiracies, once you have these attention mechanisms in place in the whole media landscape, then whatever brings you the attention will bring you the votes, will bring you the people. And so obviously, because conspiracy theories take up so much attention, one party has to claim it for themselves in order to get people, right? And in the US, we see clearly that this is the GOP. They are on board with all the conspiracies, right? With the election steal, with
Okay, so it doesn't talk about structural racism. It's a conspiracy theory on the left. It doesn't talk about these left-wing conspiracy theories, the nonsense that human beings are born basically good and that everyone's basically born a blank slate, right? These guys don't want to touch left-wing conspiracy theories.
With climate change denial, with anti-vaccine, of course. I mean, it's not that these things don't happen. I mean, also in Austria, where I'm originally from, we also had one far-right party that adopted the anti-vaccine platform to get to people. But, in a two-party system, it's a very different story, because suddenly you get way more power than just running on one or the other conspiracy in this case.
Yeah, why would a party, run on a platform being anti-vaccines? It'd have a lot to do with vaccine mandates, right? That provokes an enormous backlash, and it wasn't like that these, right-wing parties just seized on anti-vax by accident, or there was a long-running part of their platform. It was the situation of increasing and more rigorous and onerous vaccine mandates that precipitated, a backlash in, anti-vaccine activism.
You run, you already have a pretty clear split, and suddenly you take all the insane people on your side. Maybe you're going to win because of that. So, yeah.
Well, this is like, so Max is saying this is depressing and, and like ways to fix it. And I think there are like, positive things, but the one thing that I will say, like, switching the topic, I think, because it's slightly optimistic or positive, and there's rarely wins when it comes to dealing with like conspiracy theories and gurus. The Alex Jones trial, Philip.
Yeah, that was very good.
And so, first of all, there was like the settlement, right, which was in excess of $50 million, which is a not insignificant amount. Of course, he'll contest it or try to, but he's basically freaked up that trial so much that he's, and by the way, Philip, if you need to
against the nodes, I have no idea what to do in this infosphere. So if you don't go against the node of the network, I have no idea.
That's a kind of, it's not depressing, Philip. That's what's that word? I forget. It's escaping me at this hour, but like a productive piece of advice about how to combat disinformation. And I'm going to lay claim that we play a small part in doing that on the podcast.
Yes, so this is something that I always appreciated. I mean, I wasn't aware of you for a long time because I was late to the party. But this is like, and also what me and Sam are doing, and what I see many other Debunk the Funk and all the other people are doing. It's like we're a bit of the the late adaptive immune system to the poisoning of the infosphere, right? It's like we are like, okay, we are trying to do something in response to that. It's like we see everything is falling apart, and like, okay, let's do something. And I think you're very successful at it. Also, I think Debunk the Funk is growing more. So there is some need, and I think people are realizing there is a need to boost the immune system, but we cannot do it by ourselves. I have no illusion that good speech cannot counteract what's going on there. Counter speech cannot solve the problems here, because there is just an asymmetric disadvantage. It's so easy to lie. It's so much more energy to debunk. You can constantly, like Bad Stats is doing against Brett Weinstein, you can constantly keep nagging at Brett, or you can be the anti-Brett, but how much time and energy does he spend, and how much does he really slow down the Brett Weinstein, right? It's like, it's hopeless if there's no, we might be late, the inevitable, but if there's nothing else coming, we are still gonna, the body of the infodemic is still gonna succumb to the viral influencers. So we need some other interventions.
I think this is right, and I kind of feel like this is why it's useful to look at like techniques and stuff. I mean, obviously I'm biased in this respect, but I think that you can't, once you start recognizing patterns in the way that people construct arguments and so on, you see them, right? Like it's it doesn't matter if you're an area expert or whatever. It's like, it's not being an area expert in virology or demolition or like structural engineering. It's just you see the structure of the conspiracy type arguments, and it's always the same. And I think Matt and I, for example, our next episode is going to be about the sense makers ecosystem. And in some respects, and then
oh god, I listened to that for 5 minutes. I spaced out. I was like, forget this shit.
It's one of the hardest ones we've done, because it's like it is one of those things where I keep listening, and after 20 minutes it's been playing for an hour, and like, oh, I tuned out 40 minutes ago. It's just been playing in my ear, and like have to go back. But the thing about them is like you can regard them to some extent as like fairly harmless, just like waffle addicts. They're just addicted to like waffling, like kind of, what's the harm in that, right? Like it's just people constructing elaborate cloud castles, and like people get together and talk about Breaking Bad. I listen to the podcast on Breaking Bad, right? And it's people spending hours discussing the intricacies of episodes of Breaking Bad, and you're like, okay, it's not for everyone, but it's for people who want that. But like with the sense maker.
Okay, have you heard about Brittany Martinez? She's got a 1-minute video here talking about how men marry the woman.
Ever since I heard this theory, I cannot get it out of my mind. Men marry the woman in front of them at the time they are ready to get married. Let's talk about it. So I was scrolling through TikTok one day, as we all do, and I came across this photographer. She's obviously been at a lot of weddings, and she observed that the men were marrying the woman in front of them at the time that they were ready to get married, implying that that wasn't necessarily that man's soulmate or that man's love of his life. It was just the girl he was dating at the time he was ready to get married and settle down. Like, when you decide, especially a man, when a man decides that he is financially and emotionally ready for marriage and ready to settle down and ready to start a family, he takes a way different approach to dating. That part in his brain of like, oh, there's another girl out there, shuts off. Because
okay,